I think that they don't want, if they was in any of those freak off tapes, if they played a part in any of those Diddy sessions, they don't want it to get out to the general public to make up their...
Gene Deal isn't whispering anymore. He's howling. The man who once stood shoulder to shoulder with Sean Combs is now out here throwing grenades into the mythology of hip-hop's darkest night. We've all heard him say before that Puff wasn't just in the orbit of violence, but tethered to something higher, something uglier. Now he's taking it even further, insisting Shakur didn't simply vanish in a Vegas hailstorm. According to him, Shakur slipped out of view because he saw the real crosshairs weren't on the boulevard, they were in the boardrooms. The shot callers weren't street hustlers, they were the men behind the curtains, the financiers and fixers who use artists like pawns and make martyrs when the market demands blood. Deal speaks like a man who's seen too much and cares too little about what happens if he opens his mouth. And in this telling, Diddy isn't the executioner, he's just another errand boy, working for people who could crush anyone in a blink.
The boy Puffy called me though. Puffy called me back in the day. He called me, he was like, I just want you to know I ain't have nothing to do with your brother's,
That idea that Shakur wasn't taken by chaos, but by choreography, lines up with the eerie 7-day countdown. Shot on September 7, gone on September 13, exactly 6 days later. The 7-day theory wasn't just the title of his final record, it became a prophecy. We've all seen those fans with corkboards pointing out how the Don Nati album read like a script. Exit Shakur, enter Makaveli. Niccolo Machiavelli, the Italian war thinker who toyed with the idea of faking your own demise to defeat an enemy. Even the letters of Makaveli rearrange into M alive K. Coincidence or clue? And then the autopsy photo, the coroner listing him taller and heavier than he ever was. The cremation ordered so fast the man who did it retired immediately after. Too neat, too clean, too final. In a world built on chaos, the precision is suspicious. Was it ritual silence, a symbolic vanishing crafted not by chance but by order?
Do you think people had this misconception about Tupac and what he was?
He had two sides to him, yes. I'm not going to say he didn't. He was, but at the same time, he just, whatever he believed in, that's what he, that was just he voiced his opinion for whatever it was that he believed in, but he also had this caring love inside that a lot of people didn't see.
We need to ask why the system benefits when its brightest flames are snuffed, or at least appear to be. Every time an icon is lost, the catalog sells, the legend grows, the control tightens. Shakur the Rebel was dangerous, Shakur the Martyr is manageable, and look at the patterns. Why do so many of these so-called coincidences pile up until it feels like we're watching a play unfold? His mother saying he chose to leave quietly, 7 albums released after he was gone, each one feeding the machine. If you were scripting a ritual sacrifice in the music industry, would you write it any differently? And then comes the Cuba thread, whispered like contraband in back alleys. Imagine old Havana, pastel walls crumbling under the Caribbean sun, and a figure walking with his head down, eyes shaded, cigar in hand. Shakur's aunt, Asada, granted sanctuary by Fidel Castro himself, has been living there for decades under the protective wing of Havana's government. The family pipeline was already in place, a perfect route for exile. Michael Nice, another security man with ties to the Panthers, claimed flat out that he helped smuggle Shakur out, cash to hospital staff, a switch of bodies, a private jet lifting off like a prison break. He said Shakur was on that plane, sitting as co-pilot, and from Barbados he was ferried into Cuba, where Castro personally gave the nod. Why you think nobody has been arrested if they said the one that did it? Nice asked, his words echoed later by Suge Knight himself, hinting that Shakur wasn't gone, but somewhere on an island, puffing a cigar and laughing at the headlines.
Suge Knight has never identified anyone who was in the car that night that him and Tupac.
For years, locals in Havana claimed sightings of Shakur wandering the streets of old Havana, a man who looked too much like him to dismiss. Photos circulate, doctored or not, of him posing with celebrities decades after his supposed end. A private investigator even claimed to have images of him in Belize, alive and older, looking exactly like a man who traded spotlights for shadows. If Shakur knew he was on a list, if he understood the ritual wasn't just about silencing him, but about making an example. Running wasn't cowardice, it was survival, it was strategy. Better to disappear and live in secrecy than play sacrificial lamb for powers that nobody dares name.
That's why them tires is like that. That's what makes me lay a lot of suspicion on this.
And here's where the Vegas hospital story sharpens like a blade. The secret switch rumor? That in the emergency room, after 6 days of public struggle, the real Shakur was quietly smuggled away while another body played his final act. That would explain the wrong height, the wrong weight, the rushed cremation. The speed with which he was gone left no room for doubt, no time for questions. Money changes hands, silence is bought, and one of music's brightest stars slips off stage under the cover of chaos. It sounds like fiction, but every missing piece, every strange inconsistency feeds the suspicion that what we saw wasn't the full show.
I mean, that's Puffy's homie. You know what I mean? They have a relationship. They're friendly. They know each other.
And that brings us back to Diddy, the man drowning in his own scandals today. He's been named in transcripts, accused of offering millions to take out Shakur and Suge Knight. His name appears in secret interviews, in confessions, in whispers that refuse to fade away. But Gene Deal's claim reframes it. Maybe Puff wasn't the puppet master, maybe he was the puppet. Maybe he was loud, flashy, reckless enough to take the fall, while the real owners, the ones with the reach, the ones who make people vanish, stay hidden behind the curtain. Because if Shakur went underground, it wasn't to escape one man's anger. It was to escape a machine that doesn't forgive, doesn't forget, and doesn't let its chosen targets walk away.
As far as, is he going to turn people in? Is he going to cooperate? If the federal government wants him to cooperate and they're going to cut his time, because right now he's looking at 15 to life. With all the charges he has to, he won't get out till 70 years old. He about 70. That's when they start talking about letting him come to a halfway house.
And now we're staring at the strangest pattern of all, the witnesses who vanish. We saw it in the 90s. Hospital workers who clammed up overnight, bodyguards who promised revelations then wound up in headlines themselves, insiders who teased evidence and suddenly weren't available for comment. Fast forward to today, and prosecutors in New York are admitting that victim 3 in the Diddy trial can't be found. Not her, not even her lawyer. Think about that. A key accuser with very personal and explosive details on the eve of testimony, and she evaporates from the grid. That's not a scheduling issue, that's pressure. We've been here before. The night Shakur was rushed into the hospital, nurses and staff talked to reporters off the record. Then, silence. Nobody wanted to go on record, and those who did regretted it. Michael Nice, the ex-security officer who claimed to have video proof of Fidel Castro's blessing for Shakur's exile, dropped his bombshell and was reported gone within weeks. How many phones get disconnected right when the truth is about to dial in?
There's no punishment. If they protected by the road, the judge.
And here's the question that keeps ringing louder. Who benefits when those voices don't make it to the stand? Every time a thread starts to unravel, someone cuts it. It happened in the aftermath of Vegas. It's happening in the middle of this federal case. When the loudest witnesses go quiet, the only stories left are the official ones, the ones that never explain the holes. We're not saying the missing names are connected to the same hands that orchestrated the hospital silence back in '96, but we are saying the choreography looks familiar, and that familiarity should scare us.
Was the incentive just revenge, or was the incentive for that supposed money that Puffy supposedly put up?
Let's talk money, because at the heart of this saga sits a bounty that reads like a wire transfer that never cleared. In sworn interviews and secret tapes, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis alleged that Puff put millions on the heads of Shakur and Suge. The number never written down, always whispered, always inflated by fear. Did the crew ever see it? Davis himself admitted the bag never landed in their laps. Instead, the word on the street was that Eric Zip Martin, the middleman, pocketed the cash. If true, then the shooters didn't just pull the trigger for loyalty, they pulled it thinking a payday was coming. And when it didn't, what we're left with is a financial thriller, one where the top floors stay clean, the middle tier takes the bag, and the streets carry the risk. A violent ledger that never balanced.
3 law firms on retainer. I don't know how much money is coming in, but I know that a lot of money is going out every single month for Diddy.
That broken promise matters, because when the supposed bounty evaporates, you have to ask whether the whole offer was a setup. If somebody dangled money they never intended to pay, then the point wasn't just eliminating Shakur, it was engineering chaos in the Southside Crips, burning their credibility and keeping all roads away from the corporate suites. If you've ever wondered why the case keeps circling without landing, maybe it's because the payout was never designed to be real. It was bait. And once the trap closed, the accountants upstairs smiled while the bodies and reputations piled up below. Now loop it back to the Vegas hospital. The secret switch theory doesn't live on conspiracy blogs for nothing. It survives because it rhymes too neatly with what we see today. In '96, the whispers said a body was swapped, records massaged, weight and height mysteriously inflated on the coroner's sheet, cremation rushed. In 2025, a key witness scheduled to speak against Diddy slips off the docket. With prosecutors shrugging they can't reach her. 2 different eras, same choreography. Switch the subject, switch the story, and keep the machine moving. If they could shuffle bodies in an ER, what makes us think they can't shuffle testimony in a courtroom?
That boy life is dangerous. His life isn't, he's just not dangerous with the they said he's doing, but he's in danger. He knows too much.
Which brings us right back to the idea of Diddy as the fall guy. He's on trial, facing charges that could lock him away for life. Painted as the mastermind of freak-off parties and trafficking networks, he's been named in transcripts as offering millions for Shakur's head. He's the lightning rod, the noisy one, the flashy one. But look closer. If you were running a machine that thrives on ritual silence, on missing witnesses, on payouts that never pay, wouldn't you want someone like Diddy at the front of the stage? Loud enough to attract all the fire, reckless enough to be believable, isolated enough to collapse under the weight. And meanwhile, the financiers and the fixers, the shadow owners, keep their distance, stay unmentioned, never sit under cross-examination. Sacrifice one noisy mogul, protect the network.
And Tupac's a legend. Like I said, Tupac wasn't born, he was sent to us.
But the most chilling trail may not be in the courts or in the alleys, it may be in the music itself. When we revisit Shakur's Makaveli era, the timing of releases and the messages buried in liner notes don't read like coincidence anymore, they look like a cipher. An artist who knew he might never get another press conference used his final recordings as a map, not a memorial. Every beat, every misplaced word, every blurred photo in the album booklet takes on the weight of a message smuggled out under surveillance. What if the Don Illuminati, the 7-day theory, wasn't just art, but a covert drop designed to outlast the machine? Look closely and the numerical games become impossible to ignore. The album dropped 2 months after his supposed passing, yet its imagery screams resurrection rather than conclusion. The cross on the cover, Shakur portrayed as a crucified figure, turns a studio record into something closer to scripture. The release on the 7th day of a news cycle ties directly into the 7-day theory that fans dissected for decades. Was he simply flirting with biblical grandeur, or was he embedding timestamps meant to signal when his silence would be broken?
Yeah. I mean, it was like with some people, they didn't, like the flow. With some people, they didn't like the image. It differed, but, nevertheless, we couldn't.
Even the sequencing of tracks feels weaponized. The interludes bleed into each other like coded transmissions, moments of distortion where his voice sounds less like a performer and more like a fugitive reaching through static. Analysts have pointed out that certain lines, when rearranged or played backward, resemble coordinates or warnings. To most listeners, they're eerie studio tricks. To those who believe in the cipher ledger, they're premeditated leaks. Time bombs meant to explode only when we're ready to hear them. And then there's the artwork placement, which fans still argue over in forums today. The phrases scrawled in the margins, the cryptic use of capitalization, even the positioning of track titles. None of it feels random once you view the record as a coded dispatch. Some swear the interior fold of the booklet conceals letters that, when pieced together, spell out an alternate identity. Others see the entire package as a simulation of a police report, mocking the very system that thought it could document his ending. Beyond the Makaveli project, later posthumous albums extend the puzzle. The relentless stream of releases, 7 full albums after he was gone, creates the sense of a schedule, not a legacy. The timing often aligns with court filings, industry shifts, or sudden flare-ups in East Coast, West Coast narratives. Why did these vault drops appear when they did? If you treat them as milestones, the discography doubles as a shadow calendar, marking when certain walls in the industry were supposed to crack.
And they're more important to the police on the streets than in here, because they let them know what's going on.
What's most unsettling is how the lyrics themselves seem to anticipate events he could never have known if he had truly disappeared in '96. References to betrayals that hadn't happened yet, descriptions of moguls falling under federal scrutiny, even imagery that mirrors headlines decades later. For some, it's poetic coincidence. For others, it's the work of a prophet who encoded his observations for us to unlock long after the fact. Was he predicting the downfall of names like Diddy, or was he documenting a playbook he already knew would unfold? Fans who chase this cipher ledger treat it like an initiation. They gather liner notes, digital scans, bootleg recordings, and stitch them into timelines that overlap with sealed affidavits and court dates. They argue that Shakur wasn't leaving breadcrumbs about his survival. He was leaving a survival manual for the culture itself. To read him literally is to miss the point. To read him as code is to realize he may have outsmarted the very machine that tried to silence him. Each clue is less about his body and more about our awareness. In this light, Makaveli isn't a pseudonym, it's a strategy. It's a declaration that the music was never meant to be consumed passively. It was meant to be cracked. If the cipher ledger exists, then the legacy of Shakur is not locked in the past. It's a live document, still ticking, still guiding those who dare to decode it. And if that's true, then the real question isn't whether he survived the Vegas night, it's whether we finally caught up to the instructions he left behind.
So let's talk about it, man. So you feel like it was bigger than Orlando Shooter Pod. You feel like it's more to the story. You don't think it was that simple.
I feel like it's bigger because
At this point, we almost have to address you directly, like a jury. You've seen the ritual patterns. You've seen the vanishing witnesses, then and now. You've seen the broken payouts, the ledgers that never add up. Do you really think all this is random? That Shakur's disappearance, the sealed lips in hospital corridors, the missing names on trial day are all just accidents of history? Or are we staring at the fingerprints of a system that writes its own endings and dares us to note it? And here's the dare. If Shakur chose exile, then the story isn't history, it's still happening. If the ritual was never about one artist but about control itself, then his silence is part of an ongoing play. And if he's alive in Havana or Belize or somewhere even more remote, then he knows the stakes better than any of us. We've heard whispers of tapes that haven't leaked, coordinates that aren't supposed to surface, names we're not supposed to speak on air. The question now is simple. What's the next breadcrumb, and will it make it out before it vanishes too? Drop your theories in the comments, because one day the silence will break, and when it does, the whole machine might collapse. Until then, stay sharp, stay watching, and remember, sometimes legends don't end, they just hide.